Hare Krishna, Adi Purush Prabhu. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasharyade Shatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Everybody, thank you for joining us today. See, a few people are joining us on the Facebook live stream as well. Welcome, Matilda. There's somebody else wanting to join. Helen. Welcome, Helen, and everybody to this fourth session of this year, the pastimes of Krishna. So Lord Krishna's activities are referred to as pastimes. And during the first 3 sessions we've looked at Shrishti Leela, the beauty of creation, the spiritual manifestation. And last week we went through the Kala Shakti, so the time factor. And today what we're looking to explore a little bit on is the secondary creation. So that very interesting relationship between Lord Brahma and Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. So we want to keep this session quite interactive. So if at any point, if you've got any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or raise your hand and ask, because these are quite sort of very interesting, but can be quite in-depth philosophical points. And I always ask questions, all the time. So please do ask questions. And Keshav Prabhu is very good at explaining them in simple layman's terms. So don't feel embarrassed to understand anything. So do feel free to ask, and if you want to ask any clarifications and don't feel comfortable putting your camera or asking it live, do just pop it on the chat. And even those of you that are joining us on Facebook, do put it on the comment section, and I'll be looking at the feed throughout and pick up any questions from there as well. So without any further ado, I'm gonna hand over to Keshav Prabhu to take us through this 4th session, the Pastimes of Creation series. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Dee. Hare Krishna. So, yes, even those who joined now for the first time, or have not been part of the other 3 parts of the series, it's not a problem. The topic is rather broad, and anyway, we always give some retrospect. Means we shortly look at what has been dealt with so far and try to really get it as clear and possible, as clear and as clear as possible, so that everyone can understand. Perhaps for those who are first time with us today, let's shortly look at what is the intention with this particular type of series that we do here with the Pastime of Creation, and also what it is not. Some of you might know that this whole topic of creation and cosmology is connected with a lot of complex abstract concepts and numbers, which might be difficult and rather not so interesting for many because it's just too abstract. We are not going into that. I myself am not so extremely conversant with the whole Vedic cosmology. There will be certainly parts of it, particularly today, since the secondary creation deals with the planetary systems and so on. The focus, though, is that we see what is Krishna doing in his Vishnu forms and how is he relating to personalities like Brahma and so on, so that we get more of a sense how is Krishna enjoying the pastime of creation. That's why it's also called the Shrishti Leela. Shrishti is the creation and Leela is a pastime. And also in the Srimad Bhagavatam, one of our main scriptures, it is on several places being made clear that actually Krishna accepts the material energy as a pastime or as a playful, way to spend his time. For example, also Kapila Dev is describing it like that, and the term is Leelaya, and that means for him, for Krishna, the creation is in no way a big effort. There's no exhaustion on his part or like complications or whatever. No, for him, everything is very easy. He lets his energies play and enjoys them while he lets them play. And this is very fascinating. And also it is said Leelaya refers to that actually the material world is meant for his pastimes also, so that he actually enters regularly in each given universe, shows different forms of his, and wants to attract us, the living entity, so that we again develop a desire to be with him and ultimately leave this, let's call it artificial world, and go back to the original world, which is the Vaikuntha sphere. We addressed that already some sessions ago. So the idea is with this whole series to inspire and encourage those who maybe are completely new to Krishna consciousness, but also those who practice Krishna consciousness since a longer time, to get in touch with this particular pastime of the Lord, and to in this way how to say, deepen the connection, or like feel getting to know Krishna in that regard. We also established the significance of the pastime of creation in the first part. For those of you who are now their first time and would be interested to see that, it is available on Facebook, on the Bhakti Yoga London page. It is on my personal page, Keshava Madhava Das, but also on YouTube, on my channel, which is named the same as my Facebook profile. So you can also get in touch with me if you're interested to get the footage. So we established that this pastime of creation is meant for appreciating the Lord in his greatness. It said if one can appreciate and understand Krishna in his greatness and opulence, then one can also better or easier appreciate him in his sweetness. Because for us in the Krishna consciousness movement, or the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, the center of our spiritual lives is Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan, and which has nothing to do actually with the material creation. It said he has no business unless he personally appears once in a very long time period. So, but Srila Prabhupada makes clear that as our spiritual master Srila Prabhupada makes clear that it is very significant to hear about this particular pastime or pastimes. It's important for those who are affected or influenced by the material energy. And I think this is true for all of us. We all are influenced by the three modes of nature or material energy per se. And it is said, unless one is free from that influence, one cannot really appreciate the aspects of Krishna in a transcendental world, particularly not in Goloka Vrindavan. And he compares it to the proper medicine for like a given disease. The disease would be the materialistic consciousness we have, and the identification with the material world. And the proper treatment for it is to hear about the Srishti Leela in order to get the proper perspective. Who is actually the owner? What is our position in regards to Krishna? And what is our actual purpose? All right. Yes. Last time we covered the Kala Shakti. It means in the creation, one very central energy of Krishna that is involved is the time factor or time energy. We discussed how it is the actually first mover of matter, the energy that makes the creation in that sense possible, because the material energy itself is passive. It has no life, no initiative by itself. And then we discussed how Mahavishnu in the first original Purusha avatar, or like Vishnu form, he glances at the original Mahatattva. This is the subtle material energy. And then with his glance, he sends out also the time energy Kala Shakti, which makes the Mahatattva transform further by manifesting elements, by manifesting cause and effect and so on, which wasn't there before. So this time energy is actually that what makes this world move. And also it is responsible for that it is being destroyed again to some degree. So we heard about the destructive aspect also. The time factor is to be found in the Bhagavad Gita in the 11th chapter. We also discussed that because it's often not so clear. If you would ask someone who knows Krishna consciousness since longer, or the Shastras, it is not necessary that one is immediately aware, like, yeah, where is actually a time factor? It's a bit hidden even. And Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, one of the acharyas, explains that is in the 11th chapter. First, the super soul is described, and then the time energy, which are practically we can call it two sides of the same coin. It is said Vishnu is controlling the material energy from the inside as super soul. He enters within matter and controls everything, and from the outside as the time factor or time energy. So we also related last time to the Old Testament. We looked at, since we were speaking of the destructive aspect of Kala Shakti, we looked at what is actually in the Bible, in the Genesis, that we have the story of Noah, who was handpicked, so to say, by God to survive the flood. And then we related this to a pastime of Krishna in the 8th canto, actually, of the Bhagavatam, if I'm correct now, where the Matsya avatar, the fish incarnation of Krishna, is being described, the wonderful pastime, where Vishnu took the form of a golden fish with a horn, and he wanted to please his devotee, King Satyavrata, and arranged for an unscheduled devastation of the universe in which this happened. It is said usually a universe is destroyed then when Lord Brahma, about whom we will hear today more extensively, when he is going to sleep. We heard about his incredible lifespan. There's according to the Vedic version, we have a whole, timetable on which the universe is being created, maintained, and destroyed. And there are 4 ages which can be compared to the 4 seasons of a year. And now is the Kali Yuga, the age, the Iron Age, which can be compared to winter, where it's also rather destructive. And it's said once full cycle of such 4 yugas times 1,000 constitutes 1 day of Brahma. And as long also lasts his night. So, and when he is awake, all the universe is manifest. And then when he goes to sleep, then gradually the universe is destroyed. Let's say 3/4 of the planets approximately are being set underwater. So there's a huge flood, accompanied also by storms and also an Anantashesh's fiery breath that makes another scenario. And in this way, the creation is for like another for a long time partially destroyed. And there Matsya arranged that although it was Brahma's day, that Brahma becomes a bit sleepy, and he took a little nap. So there was a little devastation. Means it was the same devastation, just for a shorter time, so that King Satyavrata could travel with the Matsya avatar on the waters of devastation, could witness it. And he was instructed by Matsya about all the Vedic wisdom and could understand Vishnu in full to his capacity, was fully enlightened. And so in this way, we heard about another playful way how Krishna is using the material energy for his own interests, so to speak, or for his own pastimes. Yes, so we had some short review now. Yes, today we are arriving at in detail on that what is called secondary creation. In previous sessions, we pointed out that we want to follow the structure of the Sri Brahma Samhita, which is a very significant book in our tradition. And there it starts from the spiritual world or manifestation, going gradually to what is called primary creation, then secondary creation, and then also the dissolution, and back to the spiritual world. So we also follow this kind of structure, so that we started from the spiritual world, then we discussed the primary creation, and now we're in the secondary creation, which means we are already within a given universal egg. It was described that the universe, or one of the universes in which we are in, is coming from the skin pores of Mahavishnu. This is how he manifests them. He simply exhales them practically through his skin, and then they increase in size a bit. First, they are just small golden eggs, And then within the Mahatattva, this original material energy, which functions like a fertilizer, this little egg becomes nourished by the 5 big elements. It becomes surrounded and becomes bigger. So when this is done, when it is nurtured sufficiently, then Mahavishnu expands in another form, which is called Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. And he is taking his residence in the waters or on the waters of this universe, which is called the Garbhodaka Ocean. And Garbhodaka or Garbho means birth, and Srila Prabhupada also explains or like looks, he phrases it like this, that the universe can be compared to a womb. And a womb in which then some reception or conception, so correct word conception, I guess, is happening. And if you see here, he's on an ocean, and he again simply lets his skin work while Mahavishnu is breathing the universes. Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu is filling half of that universal egg with water out of his skin pores. It's practically his perspiration, which is though in no way disgusting. Of course, when we look at our skin and what comes out of it, no one would want to have an ocean of it, what to speak of bathe in it. But Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu is a pure transcendental person, and from him, these pure waters that fill the universe are being manifested out of his skin pores. And we see he again makes himself comfortable on this bedstead called Sheshanaga, which is an expansion of Vishnu. And there also Lakshmi Devi is present, and she massages his feet, and he is residing there in this universe. And he has within himself, on this picture we can see it a bit, the lotus navel, the lotus that comes out of his navel, on which we also see Brahma, is golden. And it said the reason why it shines slightly golden is because also in there, the living entities means us, the souls, we are being transferred there from his body. It is said the individual souls who are materially conditioned, they rest in Mahavishnu, of course, when there's no universe. Then they're being transferred through his glands within the material energy, so to speak. But then Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, again, he collects them within himself. And that's why he's called also Narayana. Narayana is the name of Vishnu, which is also used a lot in India. We'll hear that. Om Namo Narayanaya, famous mantra. And Nara means person, and Ayana means resting place. So Vishnu is the resting place of all the living entities. He keeps them in his own body. And when there's time for creation, he transfers them into the lotus stem, and then from there they're being mystically, by the help again of Kala Shakti, which is interesting, the time energy makes them act again within the material world. It is said as long as they are with Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, the souls still have their subtle bodies. We have a gross and a subtle body. And it's said at the time of partial destruction of the universe, we lose our gross bodies, but we maintain the subtle bodies in which also material desires are still existing. And then we have a long nap, so to speak, within Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. And then again, we are being placed in different bodies within the material world so that we can either fulfill our selfish desires or use the chance to become God conscious. So, and since we are also expansions of Krishna, we are transcendental, lightful beings. We will have a whole session on the Jiva Tattva, or the nature of the souls. Probably the one after this one, I plan to speak on Shiva and the destruction, and then we will have a whole session on what is actually the identity of the living entities, the souls. So yeah, we are being kept in the body of Narayan. That's one of his names, and also Narayan refers to that exactly. He is the one who fills the universe to the half with his transcendental waters and resides on them. And that's also one meaning of the name Narayana. Exactly this activity, this pastime. We can also understand that all the names of Krishna and Vishnu, they relate to activities he does. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada says Krishna actually has no name simply for himself. He gets his names in regards to his activities and in regards to how he has relationships with his devotees. For example, Yashoda Nandana, the one who is the bliss or the happiness of Mother Yashoda, and so on, and Damodar, and so on. These different names of Krishna mean different things. And Vishnu has sometimes also the same names as Krishna, but then they mean something different. Damodar, for example, in Krishna means the one who was bound by a rope, by the love actually of Mother Yashoda, refers to the rope. But in regards to Vishnu, it is describing how Vishnu has a beautiful opulent belt that is around his waist. So there are different other names which in itself are identical but mean something a bit different when they relate to a different form of Krishna or Vishnu. So this Vishnu is the one who manages, so to speak, the inside of a universe. Mahavishnu manages the outside, so to speak. He makes this universe possible. And then within each universe, Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu is the one who takes care that the creation, the secondary creation, actually can take place. So far to this whole pastime or feature, are there any comments or questions that you would like to ask? Because I'm aware often that it's quite a bit of information for me at that time or at that moment in my life. Not anymore, but I know since I studied the scriptures since now quite a long time, and so I would constantly give some space in case there's some need for either clarification or like some more elaboration.
Sorry, as usual, I've got a question. So, when you mentioned the point that Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu actually holds on to the subtle bodies and then releases onto the universe at a different place at a different time, according to the Kala Shakti or the time factor when the time's right, I'm assuming. So does that mean that when we die, we say that we all kind of, we do the chanting and we do everything so that we kind of go back to the Godhead or go back to Krishna. So do they mean that then we go back to Narayan so that he can release us back, or what does that mean?
Well, that's an interesting question. My understanding is as long as a conditioned soul, as long as an individual soul is conditioned by material energy, Vishnu is in charge particularly. At the same time, of course, there are also individual souls. In their liberated state, there might be eternal associates of Vishnu or Narayan in Vaikuntha. It is said the Purusha avatars that we see here, they particularly exist in relationship to the material world. Their pastime is to manifest this world so that those individual souls who have a desire to be independent of Krishna or Vishnu, they can have this illusory possibility of independence of Krishna and try to enjoy it. And so therefore it said also the Paramatma, for example, this Vishnu form that is an expansion of Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, is not even existing like that in Vaikuntha, the original spiritual world, because his purpose is related to this sphere. But his origin, Narayan, the Vishnu form, is existing, of course, in Vaikuntha Loka. These are all the different Vishnu forms are residing there with these four arms and the different items they carry: the club, the conch shell, the disc, and the lotus. They are being situated differently in the hands of those forms, and according to that, they have different names. Also, the 10 regularly appearing incarnations, or like avatars, because I don't actually use the word incarnation, like also Matsya, Varaha, and so on. They have their original Vishnu form and planet in the spiritual world, and it depends. First of all, we don't know usually what is the spiritual identity of a soul. This is usually something we got to wait for, that it is being revealed to us at the end of our how to say efforts in spiritual life. So the ultimate success, your Prabhupada says this, is to see Krishna in the spiritual world face to face. But which form of Krishna and which how to say part of the spiritual world one belongs to is not known to us yet. It said we have a Nitya Swarup, or eternal form, which will be revealed in time when we are fit. At the same time, there is some degree of choice involved, because there's mention of different types of liberation a soul can get. And usually it's said the Vaishnava in our tradition doesn't strive for any of those, but these liberations refer to the Vaikuntha sphere. That said, one can have Salokya liberation, one lives on the same planet as the Lord. Then is Sarupya, then that one has the same bodily features as one of the Narayan or Vishnu forms. Then is Sharshti, that one has the same opulence or riches of the Lord. And then there's the one, I don't know the Sanskrit, but that you become a close associate of a Narayan or Vishnu form in Vaikuntha Loka. And then there's another one, which is actually completely taboo for anyone. This is the, no, I forgot even the Sanskrit, this impersonal liberation, Sayujya, that you actually give up or try to give up your spiritual identity. So these are available, obviously. So, and it sometimes seems to contradict, but if you have an eternal Swarup or form, which is already there, how come we could choose that by desire? So apparently both things can happen. You have an original transcendental form related to a particular form of Krishna and a particular part of the spiritual world. At the same time, it's possible to have spiritual desires to relate also to another form of Krishna, which is not necessarily the originally situation of your being. We hear sometimes even Lakshmi wants to take part in the rasa dance. Lakshmi is related to Narayana or Vishnu in this opulence, whereas Vrindavan is not at all in the mood of opulence, or even Shiva. So there is possibility to that, but this is more mysterious, and it will be more revealed to us the more we move ahead, or the more we advance on our spiritual path.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. It was a very, of course, interesting question. So then let's look at what Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu is doing. He is the origin of Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma's, I don't even know how to call it. How is this in English? His biography, or like another term would be, give me a second. History or career is described in different books. Most famously, of course, the Brahma Samhita. Samhita means the hymn of Brahma. And then there's also in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, in chapter 8, we have one version of the story, and then also in the third canto, in chapter, I think also 8 even, there's also another narration of how Brahma is being manifested and how his whole history is unfolded. And let's maybe start with an account that is in the third canto. And we have different great personalities or sages that narrate this story, different so-called paramparas or disciplic successions. And instead, there's also one coming directly from Sheshanaga or Anantashesh, the beautiful snake bedstead that we saw just where Vishnu is resting on. And also he was once instructing the 4 Kumaras, which are sons actually of Lord Brahma. About the whole pastime of Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. And it's described there. It is sometimes a bit confusing for me. This is with the scripture. Sometimes the accounts, how to say, we heard already that there's a partial destruction of the universe at Brahma's night, and there's a complete destruction when his 100 years are completed. And so usually what we hear in the Brahma Samhita, we hear that from the beginning when again his life starts, and then the whole how he's manifested. And there it appeared that it refers to one of the nights of Brahma that has been over, and then again the material world is manifested. But in the later narration, it again seemed it rather refers to the beginning. So, however, I just narrate what this being in the third canto told by Ananta Shesh. He's describing that Viṣṇu, Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, although this ocean he lays on is very wild and turbulent, and it's quite an intense atmosphere there. They are called also waters of devastation. The material world is not a peaceful place. As we know, there are so many forces that actually give trouble to the living entity. And although it's very turbulent there and very intense, he's resting comfortably on Sheshanaga, the bedstead, who perfectly takes care as the carrier of Viṣṇu. And he, as it was said, he keeps the souls within his own body. And when there's time for the creation again, he is concentrated on the subtle form of the creation. And it said when then also the mode of passion is being activated, this subtle form of creation, or like this desire of the living entities for enjoying material world, focuses on his navel, and then in form of a lotus bud, also closed lotus, it comes out of his navel, and it is very shiny. It is said is a transcendental lotus bud, which like the sun, is full of light, effulgence, and heat. And it said all the waters of devastation have been evaporated by it. So that again, there's space. So there it seemed there was a lot of water, and then it's being again, being reduced, so that there's space for the creation. And it said then also the Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu entered into that lotus as a super soul, and he also manifested 3 modes of nature. And then when the lotus gradually opens, then also Lord Brahma is being manifested. The interesting thing is the story of Brahma, or history of Brahma, starts with that he is not at all aware of that. So he is only noticing the lotus, and for him, everything is dark. And this is very symptomatic actually for all of us, since also when we start our life, everything is rather dark. We are in ignorance or not aware of what's happening. And we have here the picture, which is nicely making giving the impression that there's the lotus, which is in itself glowy, but everything else is dark. So that's the beginning of Brahma's situation, that he wonders about who he is. And in some reports, it is said he knows that he's supposed to create, but just doesn't know how. In other reports, it sounds like he's in general wondering what's happening. And it is said that also we, first of all, are in spiritual ignorance. And then this is considered being an animal. The Vedic scriptures are very strong in that, saying everyone takes birth in the flesh. And this birth alone doesn't make a human being even human. Even if you have a human body, if you're simply born without a spiritual initiation, you're considered an animal. So also Brahma, that's what we see on this picture, attained second birth from Krishna himself. We see there like how the Gayatri mantra actually is entering the 8 ears of Brahma and then also comes out of his mouth. But before that could happen, Brahma had to go through quite some effort. So first he was going down on that lotus stem, trying to find out where does it originate. The problem was he couldn't find it, and he didn't see Vishnu, he didn't see the ocean. So he just could see the lotus, obviously. So he noticed his time also passes, almost half of his lifespan. And in one report in the third canto, it is said when he was even down close to the water, then he heard twice a call telling him tapa, tapa. And tapa means austerity or renounce. So, and he could understand it means, okay, I'm supposed to, he knew what to do with it. Obviously, we would, when we hear just some word, we not necessarily need to know, we not necessarily know what to do, but Brahma is a very intelligent being. So he went back on his lotus stem and performed tapasya. So essentially, tapasya is about giving up also the mentality of I can know by my own strength, I can do by my own strength. So like it's giving up the false ego, so to speak, and making oneself dependent on the Supreme Lord. And so he was performing tapasya, and then Vishnu actually sent Lakshmi Devi in form of the goddess of learning, Saraswati Devi, and she instructed Lord Brahma about the Gopal mantra, which is also one of the Gayatri mantras, an important mantra, where the names of Krishna, Govinda, and Gopichanda Vallabha are included. And she said, use this mantra and in this way connect to transcendence, or like to the spiritual sphere. And Brahma used this mantra and he developed a whole meditation about Krishna and Vrindavan, actually. So, and then it was successful. Krishna was pleased, and Krishna sent. Then we come to the point where he, through his flute, sent the Gayatri mantra in the ears of Brahma, and with this act, he initiated Brahma, or gave him his second birth. So this is very significant. That actually this is also representative for all of us. That actually our spiritual life really starts if there's truly spiritual initiation. This is why it's always also highlighted that we need to receive a spiritual process, the mantra from a bona fide source, so that actually our spiritual life can truly start. So, and Brahma also had been through this process. And there are some accounts, if we have time, we can read through several. In the Brahma Samhita, it is then mentioned only that he became conversant with the ocean of truth, and then he composed that what is known as the Brahma Samhita. Many beautiful verses, always with the refrain of Govindam Adipurusham Tam Ahang Bhajami. So I offer my respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda. So in this in the second canto, we find one description that when he was successful with his tapasya, he could see, he was practically invited to Vaikuntha, and he saw Lord Narayan in Vaikuntha. It's described how he witnessed the whole scene and how Narayan was sitting on a throne with also Lakshmi Devi, and he was in a very pleasing way smiling to his devotees, and everything was very opulent and shining and peaceful. So, and then Narayan also spoke to Brahma. He instructed him, and at the end it said they shook hands. A very personal gesture that Narayan and Brahma, they shook hands, and Brahma was blessed to do the work of creation. And Srila Prabhupada is explaining that this means that actually Brahma and Vishnu or Narayan, they are in a relationship of friendship. It is described there are 5 primary relationships the living entity can have with the Lord. On the how to say hierarchical ladder, on the lowest, there's the neutral relationship, which is characterized by awe and reverence. This usually refers also to Vishnu. When God is the opulent, we are small and we offer respect, which is also accompanied with intense blissful feelings. But it's not as personal in terms of closeness as other relationships. So then we have the servitorship, which then also relates to Brahma in that sense, since he's an appointed servant in regards to universal affairs. And friendship is then on the next on the list. These relationships happen on the transcendental platform. They do not happen as long as one is in a material body. That is very important. These transcendental rasas, they provide that one has left behind all material identification and is aware of his or her spiritual nature. And that's very important. One cannot be just a buddy with Krishna like that because one has a sentiment, oh yeah, I like Krishna as a friend, so let me be friends with Krishna. Of course, one can have friendshiply feelings, but that is a different thing than having an established relationship based on that one is on a transcendental platform. All right. Okay, before we come to the next part of this history that I want to narrate more, here on the screen you see that Brahma is not even only the four-headed Brahma, but he has also different features. The four-headed Brahma, this is the most famous one. In Hinduism also, you know, four-headed Brahma. Interesting is also how he got his four heads. It appears in the beginning he had one. But when he was, for example, in this darkness, as you can see here, everything is dark, and he was wondering, he was thinking, contemplating, where am I from, what I'm supposed to do, and he was looking in all directions. And he said in this context, he developed four heads. So he sees in all four directions. And this is the form the demigods can also see, which is also the form that we mostly relate to. But then there's another one. Since Brahma is a very powerful being, he is also said Vairaj Brahma, that refers to the whole universe as a body. The planetary systems and everything it's said is his rightful body. He's actually also the universal form. And it's said we have a body that we are aware of. It's called Kshetra. And Brahma's Kshetra actually extends throughout the whole universe. He's a very powerful being, actually. And then there's Hiranyagarbha Brahma, an original form which embodies even the material energy as itself. And there, not even the demigods can see him, only Vishnu can see him. So some maybe a bit interesting detail. Okay, so far, are there any comments or questions from your side?
I can't see any on Facebook.
All right, good, then I go on further. So the account in the third canto where Sheshanaga is speaking tells us that then Brahma saw Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu as a result of his tapasya. And this is like we see here. I find it's a beautiful painting. Now there was light, you know, God decided to show himself to Brahma. And I find also fitting the proportions, because we will hear descriptions, this Vishnu is huge and Brahma is coming out of his navel, and everything was revealed to him. So the interesting thing is that it was there already, but simply Brahma couldn't see. And this also relates to the conditioned soul. Everything is there already. It's not that it starts to exist when our mind kind of creates it. No, it's about when our mind becomes ready to be perceptive. If you're purified enough in our consciousness, it is said then also the spiritual reality can reveal itself to us. And here Brahma could see Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, and his impressions, I would read to you a bit. It's in the third canto, chapter 8. And it said here, Brahma could see that on the water there was a gigantic lotus-white bedstead, the body of Sheshanaga, on which the personality of Godhead was lying alone. The whole atmosphere was illuminated by the rays of the jewels bedecking the hood of Sheshanaga, and that illumination dissipated all the darkness of those regions. The luster of the transcendental body of the Lord mocked the beauty of the coral mountain. The coral mountain is very beautifully dressed by the evening sky, but the yellow dress of the Lord mocked its beauty. There is gold on the summit of the mountain, but the Lord's helmet, bedecked with jewels, mocked it. The mountains, waterfalls, herbs, etc., with a panorama of flowers, seem like garlands, but the Lord's gigantic body and his hands and legs, decorated with jewels, pearls, tulasi leaves, and flower garlands, mocked the scene on the mountain. His transcendental body, unlimited in length and breadth, occupied the three planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. His body was self-illuminated by unparalleled dress and variegatedness, and was properly ornamented. The Lord showed his feet, lotus feet, by raising them. So we get some impressions, and there's some beautiful descriptions in different parts of the Srimad Bhagavatam and other places, which help us to really develop a picture and be like an illustration of the Lord, because that is important. Depending how visual we are in our mind, some people can easily develop some picture, some image, others not. So these descriptions of the Srimad Bhagavatam, they are very concrete, and I'm very grateful for the many artists we have also within our movement who can make this amazing pictures that give us something more to meditate, to absorb our mind in, because then the pastime becomes more alive to us. Yes, so Brahma saw that.
We do have sorry, Prabhu, we do have a question.
Oh yeah, sure.
So from Shama, who says, to clarify, you indicated Brahma is a universal form. Is it the same form displayed by Lord Krishna at the battle of, I can't pronounce it, Arjuna's battle, Kshetra?
Kurukshetra.
Yes,
yes, in my understanding, yes. Because the Virat Rupa, as in the Bhagavad Gita, is the universal form of the Lord. There's another one in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is different. This is more an idea, an imagination of great sages, so to give the Lord some kind of material form. But since Brahma is said to be an expansion in the sense of Vishnu, so yeah, it said the original Brahma, like there's some kind of prototypes. It said the Brahma, the four-headed Brahma, is a jiva or Vishnu, depends. Mostly it's a jiva who is qualified, a living entity, but the Virat Rupa is meant this universal form. Yeah. At the same time, there's not too much difference between Vishnu and Brahma. Sometimes, this is yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Yes, it's a four-headed Brahma that manifests from the lotus. Mm-hmm. Okay, I would continue with another image that gives leads us a bit further into the whole pastime and the relationship between Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu and Brahma. So what Brahma is doing, first of all, when he had this revelation, he offered prayers to Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu so that he could finally then also start his work as the creator. And in order to see how powerful as a creator he is, we can understand that he is the one who actually manifests or like creates the planets even. Mostly we hear Brahma is also manifesting different living life forms. They exist in him already in a subtle form. And the planets, they exist in a subtle form in Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. It is described how Brahma can see those planets within the form of the Lord. And then it said he is arranging along the lotus stem. He's arranging a different planetary system according to their place. He's manifesting them, and later on, accordingly, situates the living entities on those planets. And last time we made a connection to the Old Testament, to that Brahma can be related, or if then one can relate the god of the Genesis, first Moses, rather to Brahma than to Vishnu, in terms of the description, what is being created. Not so much in terms of personality, character, that's difficult because Brahma exhibits a very different character. But in terms of the creation of planets and elements and so on, and living entities. So this is Brahma's part in the secondary creation. And there's descriptions that in the universe there are 14 planetary systems. And they all, as you can see here, they're situated along the lotus stem. They're being situated around them, and by the mystic power of Vishnu, they float within space. There are some challenges in terms of Vedic cosmology and Western cosmology. I'm a layman, rather. Just a few things that I know is that when we speak of planets or planetary system in the Western world, that means globes. We automatically speak of a round, how to say? Yeah, a planet is a round. It's a globe floating in space or outer space. In the Vedic cosmology, this is called loka. Loka refers, Prabhupada often says, means round, it's a globe. But then at the same time, there's mention of dvipas. A dvipa is an island, and this is flat. This is also most recently, perhaps very heated discussions are even between the flat earthers and the round earthers, however you might call them, parties who like take different stances. So the Vedic cosmology is talking of dvipas and lokas, and Srila Prabhupada in his translations consistently actually used always, even if it is a dvipa, he always used planets or planetary system. So this is a bit challenging in regards to, does that really mean in Western terms what it is meant in the Vedic way? I found some interesting illustrations that we can have a look at, because particularly there I find it's important to have some visual, otherwise it's too abstract. There are three worlds. They're called Bhur, Bhuva, and Svaha, Svagaloka. You see there in the middle is the earth. It said we are situated rather in the middle, can I have it here, of this spheres. And this above us are another 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah, and below us another 7 regions. These three worlds, actually, if you read the descriptions, start actually from Burloka. It said Bur, Bhuvar. This Bhuvar are the heavenly planets, and then the even higher planets where Brahma is residing. And this down here are actually not lokas. It's called subterranean region. That means, as far as I understood it so far, that is actually part of the earthly planets or spheres, but it's a nether region. In different maybe scriptures or reports, you also find that there are ideas that deep within the earth, even there are like some different worlds and different entities live there. Particularly, it said the Naga beings. These are snake-like beings. As I said, they reside also down there, and then and in this region, there's also no sun. You see here, maybe in this next picture, it's a bit more full. It's the same. You can go back to that. Here we have 2 artist impressions on that. So actually, these 3 islands are like this. The 3 planetary systems are dvipas, considered like islands, and in the center is this Mount Meru. And we see there's sun and moon and different spheres. So it's complex. On the right side, though, you see this picture. The upper half of it is meant in 3 parts, and this is in the middle: Bhur, Bhuva, and Svaha. These planetary systems, and below you can see where all the water flows down, and then underneath you have some areas which are gray where there's no sunlight. And actually said these, what we mentioned before, these Atala, Vitala, Sutala, and so on, these planets, they are here down there. So the whole cosmology is very complex. I just want to give whatever I know about it and the descriptions, so that we understand this whole the Vedic perspective is very different than the modern perspective. And we see also down there is the Garbhodaka ocean. It's at the lower planetary systems. They are called like that, although they're not globes floating in the orbit, but rather parts more or less of the earthly region. They're closer to the Garbhodaka ocean. It said also there some hellish planets are being manifested, but also interestingly heavenly planets. It said those in this region down here, it said these beings have even more enjoyment than the beings up here. Because it is uninterrupted, it said, although there's no sunlight, they have these powerful snake beings who also have brilliant, powerful jewels on their heads, and they illuminate the whole world there. There's no interruption in terms of suffering. They can go on, enjoy their pleasures like anything, therefore also creating intense attachment, whereas the demigods are often disturbed by also demons who come and try to take over. And then there's different troubles. So in a way it seems they have a disadvantage, but actually Krishna is blessing them, so because then they can lose attachment. Whereas these beings down there, they're thoroughly materialistic, and since they have it practically uninterrupted from birth till whatever they need to die, they have intense attachment to it. So Brahma is arranging all these three worlds. That is his part. He's also situated, so a very powerful being. And it's said even this position can be had by a jiva, means a soul like us. So if the soul accordingly qualifies, it could have the post of Brahma, which is within this world, the supreme position. And in that picture, we can see again also other personalities like Shiva, who are also residing within the spheres. And there is also there should be, I don't know how far you can see it, like on the right to Brahma, there is Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. This is another expansion of Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. This is the one who is the super soul, which I mentioned before, and he's the form who accompanies us within our hearts. I said we all have Vishnu with us within ourselves. He accompanies the living entities. I said Upadrashtanumantacha Bharata Bhakta Maheshwaraha Paramatmeti Chapyukto Dehismin Purusha Paraha. Said his main function is Upadrashtan Anumantar, said the overseer and permitter. He witnesses everything, and he grants us, according to our karma, all the things, the pains and pleasures that we deserve and desire. This is described also in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Nature and joy and consciousness. They're the super soul. It's a bit more elaborately described. Also again in the 15th chapter. So he is residing on a milk ocean, but it's another story. Then we might come to it. This is also within the material world. There is some transcendental manifestations. So, but here you have an overview of what Brahma is doing in the cosmic sense in terms of the planets. So he manifests them all, he arranges them around the lotus stem, and he is aware practically of all that, what's happening there. That's part of his kshetra, or like his body, universal body. All right. Any comments or questions regarding that? All right. Okay, something that is then, I'm really happy that we have so many illustrations on that. There's so many beautiful pictures. I like them. Then we have that Brahma further creates when the universes, when the planets are done. Of course, they're also living entities that should populate them. And here in this picture, we can also see. I mean, the written stuff probably is not so much visible, but it said out of his own body, he can manifest, similar to Vishnu, different living entities. And this is described in the 12th chapter of the 3rd canto, how Brahma is creating also different things that don't look to us like some tangible creation. For example, it is said Brahma first created the nescient engagement like self-deception, the sense of death, anger after frustration, the sense of false ownership, and the illusory body conception or forgetfulness of one's real identity. These are rather, we know them as states of existence. For us, they are something we experience. But as said, Brahma, of course, on this most subtle level, he creates all those possible experiences also that we can have within the material world. So it's not that he creates things, gross bodily things that we can touch and see and hear and smell. No, but also deep, subtle mental states of existence are being manifested from subtle gradually to gross. Interestingly, also what happened to Brahma is that his first endeavors in creation did not go as planned. Happens to us often also. We have plans and hope things go like this or that, and then they don't. So maybe it's a relief to us that even a great personality like Brahma faced the same difficulty. First of all, he thought what he created there with all these states of existence, he felt that's misleading, sinful, and he did not feel much pleasure. And then he purified himself by meditation on Supreme Lord, and then he began another term of creation. Then what he did is he manifested the 4 Kumaras. They came out of his body, these 4 boys. They were naked and they were saintly personalities. And it was said they are fully self-realized, Brahman realized. They have actually no identification with matter. But Brahma wanted them to become what is called Prajapatis. Pati means father and Praja means progeny. So they were supposed to populate the universe, means the planets. But they denied his request. They said, no, we are not interested in that. We are actually satisfied with being transcendentalist brahmacharis. We don't want to entangle ourselves. And Brahma got angry. It's also said he represents the mode of passion, which is the creative force in the universe. And he got angry, and this anger manifested between his eyebrows as a bluish person, and came out. And this bluish person is Rudra, is a form of Shiva. So he came out of Brahma's forehead between his eyebrows, and he was crying terribly. Not just in the sense of the tears came, but his sound, like how he cried, was intense and hardly bearable. And then therefore he got the name Rudra, someone who cries intensely. And then he also inquired from Brahma, what is my destination, where I'm supposed to stay, what I'm supposed to do. And then Brahma gives him that. There's so many details in the scripture. And then also Brahma tells him, okay, you now become Prajapati, populate the universe. And he did so. The thing is, though, he was a manifestation of anger, and all the living entities he created, they were also very angry and very destructive. So they actually started to practically eat up the creation. They destroyed everything and burned everything. And then they even came after Lord Brahma, wanted to eat him. And Brahma had to fend off those creatures, and he had to go to Rudra and say, okay, please, dear boy, this is not what I wanted. So second time, even things didn't go as planned. And then he advised Rudra to perform some meditation. No need for you to create such offspring. It's not helping. So in this way, Rudra was then held back from that. Then Brahma, he thought of generating living entities, and then he manifested another 10 primary Prajapatis. They are listed also in the Bhagavatam. We shortly hear the names. Marichi, Atri, Angira, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu, Brigu, Vashishta, Daksha, and the 10th son Narada. They were thus born. So Narada Muni, as far as if it's this one. Yeah, Narada Muni was born from the deliberation of Brahma. Here we see also the Kumaras on this picture. You can see them on the head, these 4 boys. I don't know if from the forehead, yeah, we can see between his eyebrows there is Rudra, and then the different personalities, they all come out of Brahma's body, which is fascinating. So such a powerful creature, out of his own body, he can just manifest all these creatures. Even more interesting for me was to hear like how, though it makes really sense, to wonder, okay, but how did the planets become populated? And it said the Prajapatis, or those living creatures, these demigods who performed these tasks, they are equipped with quite an amount of mystic opulences. That means they can take or assume all kinds of living forms that are available within the material world. Might it be animal forms, human forms, whatever forms, bird forms, demigod forms. And it said they expanded or assumed forms of male and female of different species, and in this way united and created offspring. So there's also in the higher spheres, even we see here, Brahma can out of himself, out of his own body, create things, and these things happen on a way higher, subtle level of matter. There's no gross body, there's no genetics. We are here at genetics, we have an issue if it's a certain genetic pool, and if the same person with the same with a related person, the same family would procreate, there's a high risk of deformation and degeneration. Right, on this higher planetary systems or like spheres, it's not like this. This issue is not there. So there things function obviously very differently. So these Prajapatis, they can in a mystic way assume forms and then create procreation. And it's very fascinating how this is happening. And it's also described how Brahma's features, like Narada was born from the deliberation of Brahma, means Brahma is thoughtful, and then Narada manifested. It said, which is the best part of the body. The best parts of Brahma's body is his deliberation. We heard before he has a body of pure intelligence or buddhi, and he had said this is his best part. It said Vashishta was born from his breathing, Daksha from his thumb, the Brigur from his touch, and Kratur from his hand. Pulastya was generated from the ears, Angira from the mouth, Atri from the eyes, Marichi from the mind, and Pulahar from the navel of Brahma. And then we have also another picture that is a very nice illustration. You see there on the back, it gets a bit darkish here and quite, intense. And it said here in the next verse also says, we are still in chapter 12 of the third canto. Religion was manifested from the breast of Brahma, wherein is seated the supreme personality of Godhead, Narayan, and irreligion appeared from his back, where horrible death takes place for the living entity. So I think this is also illustrated a bit in this picture, how different parts of his body bring forth not just living entities, but states of existence, so many experiences. So all that comes from Lord Brahma. And we see here also Lord Narayan as the giver of blessings so that Brahma can perform all these wonderful tasks. Brahma is said to be in the category of Jiva unless Vishnu himself takes that pose. That means he has 50 qualities of the 64 qualities Krishna has. We will hear about the qualities more in detail when we speak about the individual soul. And it said Brahma is capable to have even 5 further qualities than the original Jiva to a small extent, and Lord Shiva has them to a way bigger extent. That is why we will hear that also next time. Shiva is not the living entity, nor is the Supreme Lord himself. He's in between that. So there's these qualities relate to being all cognizant, for example, that Brahma is also fully aware of what's happening in the universe. And although he is a creature, he is first of all called Swayambhu, which means unborn. He does not have material mother and father as the most living entities in this world. He was manifested from Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu's lotus that came from his navel. And Vishnu is completely self-sufficient. He didn't need any female counterpart. Simply out of himself, he could manifest him. So he's called Svayambhu, the unborn. And although he exists within a given sphere of time, the demigods approach him in the 7th canto also as Vibhu. He's saying, you are even free from the influence of time. Vibhu means very great compared to Anu. The living entity said Anu, which is tiny, small living entity, and Vibhu is great, Supreme Lord. And this sense means greater than time or being above time. At the same time, being the knower of time, he's Tri Kalakya. Tri means tree. Similarly, Kala means times, and Gya, the knower of. So he is the knower of past, present, and future. So a very mystical, how to say, opulence to know that, to be really aware, to have sometimes try to imagine what is that when you know that. Do you see? Do you have some kind of mental window or something where you just can conceive or look into the past or into the future? How this happens, I have no idea, but it's fascinating to hear that. All right.
We do have a question, I think, around Shyamadasi's got a question. She says,
oh, yeah, please.
Hare Krishna, you indicated Narada was a Prajapati. In a past time, it was indicated that Narada served the sages. In his next life, he became Narada Muni. Please clarify.
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't have such a clear answer. I'm actually wondering myself a bit. It would take further research because according to my knowledge, Narada never engaged in the activity of being a Prajapati. Here the verse says simply, in this part of the Bhagavatam, we have 3rd canto, 12th chapter, text 21. Brahma, who was empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thought of generating living entities and begot 10 sons for the extension of the generations. And then there's the list of the 10 with Narada also there. It could also be, we usually hear in the Bhagavatam stories about personalities also in different ages. My guess is that Narada, in a different maybe kalpa or age, he performs that activity. Here we also have the report of Ananta Shesh, who is giving an account of Srimad Bhagavatam, and this could be that this is in a different time. In each kalpa, even it said, in each day of Brahma, 10 different manus or different personalities take the role of manus, or like this. It's also practically that they rule over different planets. So it could be that it was his turn in that particular time. Maybe some Vishnu Purana or some quote could solidify that. I can't just now also wonder, and this is the only explanation I can come up with at the moment.
Shambhu, I'm sorry, I don't know whether you had any follow-up questions, or feel free to type it if that answer was sufficient, or I'm sure we can pick it up another time in detail.
All right. Hare Krishna. You can hear just a bit more these manifestations of Lord Brahma. Maybe one detail before that, it's also described in one purport in the 3rd canto. I can't quote him exactly now where it is, but there's Srila Prabhupada explains that when Lord Brahma goes to sleep, he's not exactly fully unconscious as we are when we go to sleep. But since he has this very direct connection to Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, said while he sleeps, he's in another, how to say, psychic sense, or whatever, how to call that, in a connection with Vishnu. And it said they converse matters of creation while Brahma is asleep. So Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu is enjoying his yoga nidra, mystic slumber, which is always said it's not a sleep, it's pastime of Vishnu, where he's enjoying himself in the material world. And while the material world at Brahma's night is mostly destroyed, these two are being in touch, and they discuss things. And it's also Lord Brahma who is approached by the demigods to approach Lord Vishnu if there are like big disturbances within the universe. And then it said Lord Brahma is the one, he's the ambassador practically of the Supreme Lord. The demigods always turn to him. And he knows, for example, where in the universe the milk ocean is. And the milk ocean is, it's called Kshirapti. Kshirapti means milk. And it said Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, or Kshirapti-Shai Viṣṇu, is the form of Vishnu residing on a milk ocean within the universe. It's a transcendental place. It's not the Milky Way. That sometimes people bring this together, like, yeah, because there's milk, then some kind of logic tells me, oh, the Milky Way, that's where Brahma. It's not, because it's a transcendental place where Brahma can't even see it first. He knows somehow or other by Shastra, it's explained like that, before the pastime of the journeying of the milk ocean takes place. It is said he knows that there is the place, and they go there, but they can't see anything. And then by Brahma offering appropriate prayers, similarly like before he started creation, then Kshirapti-Shai Viṣṇu reveals the milk ocean in his own brilliant form to the demigods, and then speaks to them. So Brahma is always receiving also from Vishnu himself, or Krishna, the orders. For example, also when Krishna is appearing, he instructs Brahma, who instructs the demigods, here, please take birth, here, here, here. Supreme Lord is coming. So he's taking care of that. And also said, through this Vishnu form, the Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, through him, all the regularly appearing incarnations, the Vishnu avatars, they come through him. They enter through him into the universe and manifest their pastimes. And there's an interesting story, or like an amazing story about Lord Brahma, because we heard now about this universe with the 14 planetary systems, with the four-headed Brahma. And once Brahma was visiting Lord Krishna in Dwaraka, while Krishna was ruling still in Dwaraka, and he announced himself at the entrance, and the servant went, okay, I announce you to the Lord, just wait a second. So the servant came back and asked, which Brahma? Krishna is asking, which Brahma? And Brahma was perplexed and first didn't know what to say. He said, yeah, it's me, Brahma, the father of the 4 Kumaras. I mean, who else could it be? So the servant went back, then let him in, and then he paid obeisances to Krishna, and then Krishna asked Brahma what he wants. And I said, but first, before we speak, I have a doubt. Why did you ask for whose Brahma is there on the door? I mean, what's the meaning of this? And then Krishna meditated for a moment, and then many Brahmas manifested with 8 heads, with 10 heads, with 100 heads, 1,000 heads, even said 1,000,000 heads. So all these Brahmas were being summoned, so to speak, by Krishna to appear there in Dwaraka, and Brahma could witness all that. Because Krishna said, yeah, there's so many Brahmas, there's so many universes, So Brahma saw all these Brahmas, and these Brahmas offered the prayers to Krishna because they understood Krishna is our origin. And then if this wasn't enough, he also suddenly started to see many different Shivas with also many heads, also up to the millions. And it said Brahma started to feel like a rabbit between 1,000 elephants, something like that. So very insignificant and very humbled. And Indra, so he saw from different universes these manifestations. And one of the most mystic aspect is none of these Brahmas assembled witnessed that all the other Brahmas and Shivas were also assembled. Everyone thought Krishna is within our universe, in our Dvaraka, and we have an audience with him. So only Brahma, the four-headed Brahma, he could see at that moment that all these other Brahmas were there. So this speaks for also this whole, how to say, dimensions, and if we usually think in terms of space and stuff, and then it's hard to understand how could that even happen, how to accommodate all these Brahmas and so on. But for Krishna, time and space, of course, are like a very different subject matter. So he then again released all those Brahmas and Shivas, and informed Brahma, well, your universe with 4 billion diameters in how does it said, in length, or like, yeah, in 4 billion miles in diameter. Sorry, I'm confused. Is the smallest. So even on top saying, yeah, you rule the smallest universe of all. Like according to the size of the universe, these different Brahmas have even different numbers of heads. So that was a very powerful experience for Brahma, and he confirmed to Krishna, saying, yeah, I assumed, or like now I get confirmed in my assumptions about you, about the Supreme Person, and so on. So like in this way also Krishna is playfully dealing with his servants. I said the demigods are the appointed servants within the material world, and they facilitate the pastimes that happen within the material world. Like when Krishna appears as Vishnu and so on, then the demigods assist. For example, also in the Ramayana, when Lord Ram comes, he said Vishnu Tattva. He is a category of Vishnu. When he has greenish complexion and he comes with Lakshman and Bharat and Shatrughna, they are like the first 4 expansions of Vishnu, Vasudev, Shankarshan, Pradyum, Aniruddha. Sometimes it's said they're expansions of the different weapons and stuff of Vishnu. And then who are the monkeys who ultimately fight with Lord Ram in Lanka? These are demigods. And they take the form of monkeys. And then as well as when there's Krishna Lila and so on, always the demigods, they accompany Krishna. All right, I think then also in terms of time, we reached our time limit today. About Brahma and his relationship to Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, but also in general, Brahma's identity, secondary creation. So please, if you have any more comments or questions, feel free to ask them. And yeah, the plan is to continue also most likely next week, since we had it the last 4 weeks like that, always on Sunday, again, 4 p.m. to continue with part number 5, which deals then with Lord Shiva in his different aspects and the dissolution of the universes, and then followed maybe there already, or maybe the next session is then also the individual souls. We can spend some time there. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Do you have something on Facebook?
Next week. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
There's no questions on Facebook.
Okay, no problem. Okay, then we complete here. Thank you very much for your participation. I'm glad to be of service in this regard, and looking forward for the next session. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.